I can tell you the reason this video took so long is because my time has become very limited since the last one. I could tell you that it was because working for long hours sapped my drive, or that with every passing day of the video not being out, the pressure to release it kept piling up. I could tell you that because I wrote and recorded it in 2017, the fact that some of the things I said became dated when the new year came around was a real demotivator. Or that when I played the game over for footage, I felt the need to re-edit and re-record some things to be more in line with my new feelings about the experience. I could tell you all of this. But the truth is, I was waiting for this bad boy to ship.
RACROX.
Collect-a-thon platformer, a genre I really need not talk more about, but of course the genre has always been about wanton access, so why should I stop now? It's time for Super Mario Odyssey, bitches. And if you're wondering how you got here, you were probably looking for Mario Roblox skins and made a grave typo. This year we were treated to a high concentration of 3D platformers, more than we've seen in one year for a long time, and they came from both the AAA sphere as well as the indie sector. Some of these entries have been amazing, and some just mediocre. When it came to the Collect-a-thon entries specifically though, I was never actively disappointed even if I felt some of the games didn't live up to their full potential. And of course one game blew me away so much I made my first ever review and dedicated 20 minutes to the damn thing. But I've talked about that game enough. Today we're going to be talking about a 3D Collect-a-thon platformer that decided, let's go back to the basics, but at the same time, let's flip this entire goddamn genre on its head. Yes, hello dear viewers, and welcome to a video that's as much a review of Super Mario Odyssey as it is discussing what the game does to revitalize classic ideas and fix old problems. So without wasting any more time, let's begin. Oh, right, spoilers. So, okay, I toyed around trying to make this without various levels of spoilers, but it became clear that some of my key examples are worlds not shown off in previous trailers, so if you consider that a spoiler, I can't really avoid it. As for story spoilers, well, for what little there is, I'll keep the final moments until the end and give you another warning then. Sound good? Alright, let's go. Game starts out pretty simple. The villain defeats the main character in the opening minutes, but with the help of a new friend, he chases the fiend, defeating him and his crew across the globe. Wait a minute. Armed with Cappy, Mario is tasked with traversing a wide variety of kingdoms and collecting power moons to help your ship, the Odyssey, fly. And right away, we get into my first major compliment of the game, the level aesthetics. This game has some top-notch presentation, and I'm exceedingly glad they strayed away from the more blocky, simple aesthetic of 3D World. More than that though, the sheer variety in what you'll be looking at, from the more realistic vibes of Fossil Falls and New Donk City, to the more stylized Forgotten Isle and Mount Valbano. And while at first I did have a kind of petty complaint that the worlds weren't cohesive like Sunshine, that was later fixed with tourism. But we'll get to tourism a little later. Finally, as far as presentation goes, we have the soundtrack, which is good. Overall, it's not my favorite, but there are some really standout tracks, and the ones that hit the mark really hit it hard. Now gameplay, this is where the game really shines. Mario's moveset has not been this robust since Sunshine, and honestly compliments to the chef because it makes traversing these worlds tremendously fun. One thing though, the dive. Such a small thing, but a bit of a pain point in my mind. For one, it screws with me because its purpose is decidedly not that of Sunshine, so it's a bit hard fighting my muscle memory in favor of rolling. Secondly, while I'd say the Koopa races have hammered it into me at this point, near the beginning I would find myself tripping up the dive combo and clamoring for it to just be one button, or at the very least be able to remap certain functions. Over time I got used to it, but I still think I prefer the simplicity and utility of Sunshine's dive. I use the Joy-Cons though, sometimes in the grip, sometimes out of the grip, and so I think it's possible I would have had a simpler time if I had used a Pro Controller. As for the captures, well, all I really have to say is the same thing I said when I first saw them revealed at E3. Banjo-Kazooie, eat your heart out. Most of Odyssey's captures are not the one-trick ponies we've come to expect these transformations to be. They're used in a variety of abundant ways where even the simplest of mechanics can be used differently across challenges. And this is the first sign I got that made it seem like Nintendo was trying to give a big fuck you to the 3D platformers of yore. They set out to make the Collect-a-thon to end all Collect-a-thons. Did they succeed? Well, we'll see, won't we? Next up, the level design. Here's the biggin', folks. After all, what good are solid mechanics if the game isn't designed around them? What? No, this isn't a Sonic Forces. Shut up. Anyway, thankfully, Odyssey's worlds are designed incredibly well. There's a striking balance between openness and linearity here. Each world has its own problem to solve, and while for the most part you can completely ignore these missions, explore, grab enough power moons to power up your ship, and move on, you're incentivized to assist the residents with a few things. And right here is the genius in Odyssey's design. You only need something like 120 moons to beat the game, and with 880 in the game, someone only playing to finish the main story isn't going to have too hard a time. But then you have someone like me, someone who feels obligated to get every single power moon and purple coin. One of the biggest problems I come across when playing a collect-a-thon platform is I'll always exhaust a world getting everything, or at least as much as I possibly can, before moving on. What this has is the potential to create a sense of fatigue after spending too much time in one world. And you might think, well, Brody, you were the one shouting from the rooftops that you'd rather have large worlds to explore and know in more depth than a barrage of levels you'll never get to know. And to be clear, yes, I still prefer the exploring approach. Fatigue is not something I feel too often with these things, but it's always a risk. Every world has a set amount of moons available when you arrive, more are released when you finish the main questline of the world, and even more are released when you defeat Bowser. What this means is while the game has plenty for you to explore on your first run through, it expertly holds some moons at bay for later so that you may return after having visited all the other worlds. And by then you'll have them all unlocked so you can hop around at will. This means if I ever felt myself getting tired of an area, I wouldn't just have the next area to go to, I'd have the entire game at my disposal. It's a Metroidvania mechanic without really being a Metroidvania mechanic, and it's one of the best I've ever seen. Because unlike ladder climbing in Spyro 2 or the costumes in Sly 4, Mario's available moveset never actually changed to allow access to new parts of an area. The world around him changed. And it wasn't just for one or two specific areas in a world, it was a brand new extensive set of stuff. Speaking of Spyro, I always praise Spyro 2 and 3 for mixing linearity with exploring, the main objective of every world being to get to the end to get the talisman or villager, but along the way you can explore for orbs or dragon eggs, with these secondary collectibles being largely optional until the final boss. Now for the most part, Odyssey's worlds are obviously much more open than Spyro's, more akin to Banjo in that way, but the quest lines you follow in each world remind me strikingly of making your way to a talisman at the end. There's almost always some kind of linear path to follow if you want, with tons of secrets along the way. It's hard for me to say which kingdom is my favorite because they're all honestly pretty good, even if Bonneton could have stood to be a bit larger. But gun to my head, I'd probably note either the Forgotten Isle, Bowser's Castle, or Steam Gardens as my favorite. For the latter two, it's because they epitomize this linear but exploratory design. The entire worlds are used for their quest lines here, but that doesn't stop them from having a ton of branching paths and optional objectives. Now I love the Forgotten Isle for different reasons, the aesthetic being a major part, but I also really love its tight design. All of the worlds have fairly tight designs, save for maybe Toast Arena, but I really noticed it with this one, and a big reason was the Koopa races. A modern-day incarnation of Koopa the Quick is here to challenge you to what are essentially time trials of getting from point A to point B in a world, complete with leaderboard, and let me tell you, the leaderboard is addicting. I know I'm never going to be the best in the world, but damn it, I'm going to be the best on my friends list. I even got into a bit of a rivalry with my friends where we would compete for the top spot, shaving off even the most minuscule of time to win. This competition encouraged us to look for shortcuts we wouldn't normally think would even be possible, and this is where the brilliant synergy of Odyssey's level design and mechanics shine brighter than it ever had. Not only did I get to learn these worlds inside out, I got to take that knowledge and apply it with my skills to create incredible shortcuts. I never looked up these time trial runs online because to me half the fun and satisfaction was figuring out the shortcuts for myself. And when I found a shortcut and thought to myself, man, this is pretty clever, I had to stop and think, holy shit, Nintendo knew! They designed these worlds in such a perfect way that you wouldn't think to do this right away, but you totally can if you want. Something I would love to see is sort of a user-generated content thing where we could make our own Koopa races, just like putting a start and finish somewhere in the world. I want to be able to see all these combinations because some of the Koopa races are a little simplistic for the worlds they're in. Alright, that sort of concludes the gameplay section. Presentation and story have largely been covered, but there's some small spoilery bits to talk about now, so skip to the time on screen now if you don't want to see that. Alright, with that out of the way, what is it with dope collect-a-thons having hype anime endings? First Hat in Time and now this? You know, you beat Bowser and that's cool, but then you control him while this song plays that's honestly even cooler than Jump Up Superstar. On top of which, you also unlock Peach's Castle and the Mushroom Kingdom as its own entire world, which is actually teased in Volbano if you explore enough, but I almost wish it wasn't. Along with this, if you finished every world's main quest line, you'll have unlocked tourism. And on the surface, all that means is you'll see residents from every kingdom visiting other kingdoms. Such a small detail, but it goes a long way to making the Odyssey world feel much more cohesive. I love this aspect so much that I told myself on repeat playthroughs, I'm just gonna rush to Bowser so I can unlock tourism ASAP before exploring and getting the rest of the moons. And hell, it can even change the terrain a bit, like having these fork dudes now on this building giving you a new way to climb it. Finally, at 250 power moons, you'll unlock the dark side of the moon, and at 500, you'll unlock the darker side. The dark side is a boss rush with some harder challenge rooms and a load of hint art. Not the greatest thing in the world since the Brutals weren't the most amazing bosses, and the challenge rooms are just harder versions of previous rooms, although I wanted to get the dark side of the way, so these were my first time seeing the rooms, and hoo boy. The darker side is now the obligatory final gauntlet in all 3D Mario games, and while it has some cool stuff like everyone being there to cheer you on and Cappy reminiscing at the end, the gauntlet itself isn't anything special. It's not all that difficult, which means the only real challenge is a test of your patience, since if you do screw up, you're sent all the way back to the beginning. And I get that's the point, but I'd rather have a bunch of shorter, extra hard challenges than a marathon of medium difficulty ones. Ultimately, I'm glad I got it out of the way when I did, because it's just a small, insignificant thing in the grand scheme of things, and I was able to return to the fun explorer bits for a majority of the game right after. As for the completion bonus, well, I completed the game because it was super fun and I wanted to, not for some bonus, but if you're the kind of person who only completes games if they have a worthwhile bonus, it's nothing stellar. Getting all 880 moons gives you a giant shimmering gold sail, a harder version of the final boss, and something that made me laugh with flashbacks to Sunshine. Buying your way to 999 will also net you a small cutscene at Peach's castle, but honestly don't sweat it if you can't bring yourself to get everything. Super Mario Odyssey is not the 3D collect-a-thon platformer to end all 3D collect-a-thon platformers, even if it feels like it might be, but it is still a damn good game. There's more collectibles in this game than you can shake a stick at, and whether you get a moon as a reward for completing a challenge or just net one out in the open by exploring the worlds, each one is satisfying to collect. The game crafts a fresh new experience while taking the best ideas from previous 3D Mario titles, along with entries from other series like Spyro and Banjo, and expanding upon those ideas while fixing problems of the past. Every inch of this game is a joy to explore due to its fusion of mechanics and level design, and I had a blast all the way through collecting everything I could get my hands on. So, only 2 questions remain. Is this now my favorite 3D Mario title? Did it surpass Sunshine for me? And the answer is, I don't know. This question isn't something I can give a concrete answer on right now, and I doubt it's a question I'll be able to answer for a very long time. I need to let Odyssey ferment, maybe replay it a couple times down the line before I can really look at both games and choose which one I love more. At the end of the day, it might come down to raw charm, and even then I don't know which one takes the cake. The second question is, does this game beat out Hat in Time for the best game I've played all year? Well, I guess we'll just need to wait for my best games of the year countdown. One last thing, a cool idea for this game would be to have more kingdoms as DLC expansions, given that Nintendo is experimenting with DLC now. I'd love to see this. Now don't get me wrong, I want to see an Odyssey 2 or whatever the form the next 3D Mario may take, but I'd want that to be as largely original as this game. DLC, however, would be the perfect place to unload on fan service. In particular, I'd love to maybe see a story expansion where you play as Luigi and visit 3 to 6 kingdoms, maybe based on places we've seen before like Luigi's Mansion, Isle Delfino, Rogueport, the Bean Bean Kingdom, Warrior World, or the Comet Observatory. I know I'm just kinda gush wishing for this idea, but damn it, if the 64 boys get Peach's Castle, I need my GameCube era-ish locales. Hell, throw in a DKC or 64 inspired kingdom for good measure. What? Luigi's in the game now, but he's not playable. He's got balloons? It's kinda what I wanted with the Koopa races? Close enough. Love you.
Looks a wrap.